Good evening and welcome back, everybody, to the Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube channel. Thank you guys for tuning in to another late night edition of the BC Lions preview show. Back again for the third straight night in a row, Blake. Wednesday night weekly show last night with Matt, and back again here with you. Although you pretty much joined Matt and I last night. I saw it was nice to get a familiar face in the comment section. But buddy, it has been a miserable day out here. I'm glad I was working outside, but had a little bit of cover, so I didn't have to work in this weather today. But it sure picked up this morning and hasn't really slowed down since. It has been an absolute miserable, windy, wet, rainy day. I know you were just out in it. I know I've been enjoying storm watching, if you will. I've been sitting on my couch watching, obviously, the Calgary Hamilton game that was earlier. Hamilton running away with that one, and then UBC and Calgary playing here. I had the curtains open, was sitting all nice and cozy on the couch, watching how miserable it was out there. It was sure windy and rainy, and I know you're probably glad to be inside and warm now. But how's your day so far? And thanks for joining me, buddy.
Yeah, had better days. Not to go too much into details, but unfortunately, the Hayeks suffered another loss today, a very close one by 1 point, 18 to 17. But we were just talking offline. It's good because BC High School still got a couple more weeks, so we're gonna have that figured out and hopefully go on a long playoff run. But yeah, I did see that UBC was up big. Looks like they're gonna get their fifth win in a row and set up a first place showdown next week with the Manitoba Bisons. I saw that Hamilton jumped out to a 27-0 lead and then kind of coasted from that point to the 42-20 win. And I'm really excited to talk about this Lions game because, we talked about it very briefly on the weekly show, but probably the biggest news of the CFL week was that Vernon Adams is going to start this football game, and I think more importantly is, I know we will get into this here in a second, but if the game goes well, Vernon Adams will start in the playoffs as well.
Yes, it should be interesting. A lot of storylines that have been circling this team for a while now, but have come to the fruition with Vernon Adams getting the start here, week number 20, the BC Lions regular season finale. So before we get into it, Blake, as always, like, comment, subscribe. When you guys subscribe, hit the notification bell. You guys will get notified every single time Blake and I go live, Matt and I go live, me, Blake, Coach, and Shane go live. Whoever may be on the channel contributing, subscribe. When you guys do, press the notification bell. It'd be greatly appreciated, as well as follow us on our both of our social media accounts at Canadian Football Fanatics on Instagram. For those that are tuning in over there as well tonight, thank you guys for tuning in, and on Twitter/X at underscore CF Fanatics. So, Blake, let's get into it, buddy. A lot of storylines, like I was just talking about, but the biggest one, obviously, with the quarterback, and obviously the quarterbacks usually get all the publicity and all the storylines, but I think rightfully so. This has been a situation that has been talked about with this team dating back to when Nathan Rourke signed with the team. Now, I think well over 2 months ago, um, and obviously, I think it is a super, I think, tricky situation. We talked a little bit, as you mentioned, about it Wednesday night, but I don't think we got into a full discussion, saving it for tonight, obviously, with a little bit longer of a time period to discuss it, because I think this will probably take up a majority of the show tonight, judging that just the starting lineup's pretty much the same. Depth charts look pretty similar. So, talking about the quarterback, I think this has a lot of layers, Blake, because I think this is a first and foremost, I think VA getting rewarded for how well he's handled this situation, how much of a professional he's been. I know I voiced it on social media of no matter what happens here from here on out, I don't know if I was the biggest Vernon Adams fan. I wasn't I wouldn't go as far as saying I was a hater by any means, but I think maybe you could say I was a realist. I think from now on, wherever BA goes, I'll always be a fan of Vernon Adams, and always root for him because of the person and guy that he is off the field. And I think he is a terrific talent as well. And I think there is a championship caliber season. I know a lot of things have to go right, but I think there's a championship caliber season in one Vernon Adams' career here in the near future. Hopefully, it's this year with a magical playoff comeback run with them winning the remaining 4 games and going on to do what they were promised to do. And I think unfortunately for VA is I'm a little bit nervous because I think it's putting him into a pressure situation now with understanding. I think the biggest gripe that I think all of us fans and even CFL fans probably have had, with when you put it in the group chat here earlier in the week of the news being reported at practice, Rick Campbell was going to go to VA. Of why did it maybe necessarily take so long? They obviously had the embarrassing loss to Saskatchewan. We don't even see Vernon Adams whatsoever. We saw Chase Bryce third string
Nope.
back for whatever reason. I just think it's a very puzzling situation the way they've handled this because they and Rick Campbell even doubled, tripled, whatever it is now, quadrupled down of, he said that the whole time they said this is a two quarterback system. They wanted to use both of them, but then he's also kind of put his foot in his mouth because he didn't use both of them. They're down to Saskatchewan. Thinking back to Toronto, he said that his team needed a spark going into that second half, and it's kind of funny because if you think back to that game, Nathan Rourke had just led
Touchdown drive.
a spark kind of touchdown drive. They get points there before the half. Ultimately, Rick Campbell goes to Vernon Adams, which is no fault of his own. I understand that he's able to do that situation, especially because he's staying with the two quarterback situation. But now, in every other situation where they've struggled even more, he's went away from that. He's rode Nathan Rourke, and in the little halftime interviews that we get, he's very quick and stern about it. Like the media has kind of a problem with like the media is wrong for asking the question when I think he's the one that kind of opened up that can of worms. Now we get to the last week of the regular season. Is that really fair ask to throw Vernon Adams to the wolves, if you will, against the Montreal defense that that offense is missing some pieces, but that defense has a majority of those guys
Yep.
that are big time player, big time names across the CFL, all-star caliber players. And Vernon Adams hasn't been in the starting lineup here for the better part of 2 months. And I think if I remind people too, he wasn't playing at his best. Those final 2 games, I believe Calgary, and I forget the other one before he got injured. I
Winnipeg
think it
when
was
they
shut out.
he got injured in the fourth quarter. In the first three quarters, they got shut out.
Right. Sorry, it was he got hurt in Winnipeg. It was the game prior to Calgary that I believe they didn't score for 3 quarters. He finally broke through with a Justin McInnes, touchdown to Justin McInnes, and then got shut out to Winnipeg. Obviously, got hurt as well. So had 2 tough games going into his injury. Obviously, I don't fault him for the quiet second half that he got versus Toronto. I think that was probably to be expected, but I think it's kind of an unfair spot now to you basically especially because they went public with it, Blake. Of they Rick Campbell basically said that if VA plays well, he's going to get the job in the playoffs. So I think that adds a
Yep.
little bit more pressure. Although it's I think pressure. What's the saying of pressure makes diamonds or
Or it
that
bursts
situation.
pipes.
So or breaks bus pipes. So maybe a pressure is good for one burnout, but I just don't think in this situation he needs to feel like he has to come be Superman because of all the other situations that are going on that we've talked about for multiple weeks on whether it's previews, post games, weekly show of I kind of use the analogy of a lot of holes in this boat, the boat being the BC Lions team this year of the quarterback arguably you could probably argue is the least of this team's worries with I think there was a good saying that Farhan Lalji said on Donnie and Dolly this week of whoever's at quarterback come the playoff time, they're more likely than they're gonna have to outscore their defense. Now that
Yep.
might sound like a funny term to say, but what he's saying is that the defense is gonna allow a certain amount of points. Your offense is gonna have to make sure that they score more than that, whatever it may be. Although this offense has the firepower to do, I think it's a very extremely tough ask in a playoff atmosphere when games get a little bit tougher. Teams are seeing each other for the third, fourth time now in a row, and especially in BC's situation, you're on the road, you're in probably some weather situations, and we've seen what happened in the last 2 years in Winnipeg when they've struggled to have communication, communication and on the same page. We saw them kind of get late in the play clocks, struggling to get plays in that sort of situation. So Blake, long-winded way of kind of getting back to you, buddy. But what are your thoughts on Vernon Adams and his situation here with the BC Lions in week number 20?
Yeah, I agree with you, Cole. I was very frustrated that it took this long for Rick Campbell to make this change. And it's nothing against Nathan Rourke. Like, I I agree with you. I don't think it's a secret that, and I don't want to say this or for this to come across the wrong way, but like it's not that I'm not a Nathan Rourke fan. It's just that I felt that Vernon Adams was performing so well, and it was kind of a slap in the face for them to come and sign Nathan. I get why they did it. Vernon was hurt at the time. Jake Dolegala, he's not going to get the job done, and you felt like if Jake Dolegala was your starter until Vernon Adams comes back, maybe your season was thrown away. But at the same time, it feels like the Lions have almost, and I say almost because they do have a chance to turn it around and make this season a success, but it feels like they've almost thrown the season away anyways with Nathan Rourke. There was some stats that I saw earlier today, and I believe it was from either our friends at Three Down Nation or not Three Down Nation, sorry, Three Down Bros, and or the Roar Report, and they tweeted out the stats between Vernon Adams' 8 starts this year and Nathan Rourke's 8 starts, as of course Jake Dolegala did get 1 start this year. Vernon Adams had a record of 5-3. Nathan Rourke's was 3-5. Both of them had a completion percentage of almost exactly the same. Nathan's was, I believe, 67.4, and VA's was 66.7. VA threw for more yards than Nathan. And the one big stat that jumped off the page to me was the 13 touchdowns from Vernon Adams Jr., just the 4 interceptions, while Nathan Rourke has only thrown 4 touchdowns, Cole. That was astounding to me. 4 touchdowns since he came back to the Lions, 9 interceptions. So he's averaging just 1 passing touchdown every 2 games since he came back to the lineup. I do agree with you. I didn't like the play to pull pull Nathan at the end of the first half against that Calgary game and put Vernon Adams in the game, especially because at that time the Lions had made it a 2 point game. I believe they were down 9 going into the half as Toronto scored late in that first half, but they were down 9. Nathan had just led a scoring drive, and then VA comes in, and the first drive he had was looking really good for the Lions until just past midfield, they gave up back to back sacks. They ended up punting the ball, and unfortunately for them, they never really got closer in that Toronto game. But I was absolutely shocked. You and I, we did mention this on the weekly show on Wednesday as well, very briefly. But you and I were texting back and forth on last Saturday in Regina, and you had kind of said to me, "Look, man, if VA is not in like near the end of this third quarter here, I think he doesn't play the rest of the year. I think the Lions are trying to protect their trade asset." And my response to you was, "Well, the other option is they're throwing away a Grey Cup hosting year." And it seems like they don't want to get a win in this or not that they don't want to win. Teams always want to win, but it felt like Rick Campbell and the coaching staff, as I'm sure he was talking with Jordan Maximic almost every week, they were okay with throwing away a home playoff game, with throwing away a really good chance, as it's no secret going into Winnipeg, going into Saskatchewan, you're going to have to go to both of those places if you want to get back to BC. It doesn't matter which order you have to go there, you're going to have to go to both of them. And if the Lions were able to have a home playoff game, I think it would have made it a lot easier. Now, again, not to say the Lions can't do it, but it would have made it a lot less tougher road if they hosted one of those games.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting situation here because I think the thing that probably is going for Vernon Adams in this situation is that if we do look at it from a bird's eye view of the situation that VA and Nathan are in, Vernon Adams probably has the more chemistry with this receiving core than
Yep.
Nathan Rourke, and I think that probably has something going for VA because he is going to feel comfortable when he gets into there. It's just a matter of rust of not playing for 2 months. It's kind of like it's almost starting like a new season almost in some sort of ways of kind of those week ones and twos of sometimes they're slower, sloppier type games where you're not at your best. You miss some throws that you would like, and maybe you're a little bit slower on your reads because it's just taking you a little bit of time to get up. I think that's totally understandable and fair for Vernon Adams to struggle a few times, miss a few throws tomorrow. But I think it's unfortunate that it's coming at this crucial of a time in the season where every single throw is going to be under a microscope from either of quarterbacks. The pundits online, the fans online, the JJs, JCs online that are some of these reporters and stuff like that. They're going to start asking the questions if VA misses a throw or two of do they go back to Nathan already and stuff like that. And I just think it's going to be a really interesting 3 or 4 hours to watch that game, see what happens. There was um, a video taken last week, and it's been going around actually for quite a few weeks of the lines that they put out. I'm sure you know where I'm going with this of
Yeah.
pregame of the team kind of getting a little bit hyped up. Now, for years, this has been usually you see Dominic Rhymes in the middle of these usually pregame talks and stuff like that. Obviously, Dominic Rhymes going to Ottawa this year. I was curious to see who was going to step up as a vocal leader. I know me and you talked about this actually in the offseason a couple times as well of seeing who was going to step up. A lot of these guys are more so quiet, kind of do it by action. VA wasn't necessarily one of those guys. I know Gary Peters, TJ Lee kind of filled in as well, but it kind of seems that since VA has been back in the lineup, he's been very vocal and kind of been one of the leaders in some of those pregame talks and stuff like that. And it's I think it's just the perspective of the video, and it just seemed a little bit weird because of how it was shot with Nathan kind of standing. I don't know if I would say awkwardly in the background, but kind of quietly. Not really. From the video, it didn't really seem like he was too into it. Now, obviously, he doesn't seem like too much of a rah-rah guy, but I did think that was kind of a rather weird encounter, and I do wonder if this team is still. Um, and I don't know if I actually wonder. I think I know that this team is still probably Vernon Adams' team, just because no, as you said, no offense to Nathan, but just coming in like this, he's been gone now. If you think about it, for basically the better part of 2 years.
Cheers.
Obviously he comes back this season, but VA had himself a whole full season, and then the 6 or 7 games this year before his injury. Um, you know, this team is kind of bought into the Vernon Adams, effect or whatever you want to call it. And I'm interested to see if that does give this team a little bit of a boost of, the shot in the arm that, they have their quarterback back. I think that makes things a little bit more interesting because, alluded to on Twitter last week of hell having to freeze over before Vernon Adams is a BC Lion and Nathan Rourke has to go elsewhere. Um, that I think it just throws a big wrench in this thing if this kind of roster still rides around Burn Adams because you've essentially let your front office do the work of what really should be done by a locker room and how those guys feel about who leads their team. Now, obviously, a guy like Nathan Rourke comes back, he wants to come back to you. It's hard to kind of say no. Um, so it's just a tough situation for all parties, but I'm really interested to see how Vernon Adams fares when the fellows are kind of all riding around him, and I'm sure he's going to be feeling a little bit of confidence and swagger come kickoff. But Blake, what are your, I guess, maybe fair expectations for Vernon Adams in terms of, I'm not expecting a 350-yard game and, 3 or 4 touchdowns or anything like that, but what do you think are kind of fair expectations? And obviously, I think is the only thing personally for me that that matters, it would be a win and getting the Lions to. I guess it's crazy to think. I guess we're only going to be 9-9. Hey, that's as best as you can
Yeah.
get on the year is 500. If we're going to win the Grey Cup, we're going to be. I guess we could be 8-10 and still win the Grey Cup, but 9-9 from where we were, Blake. Holy smokes! If you told me we were going to finish 9-9, I would have said, uh, did we lose both quarterbacks or something must have drastically happened? But what do you think are fair expectations for Vernon Adams to not get fans for not to get kind of too ahead of themselves?
Yeah, I think fair expectations for VA are probably between 200 and 250 yards, and as well as 2 touchdowns, I would say. I think the big thing that you mentioned, number one, I think they're going to feed Justin McInnes the ball a lot. I don't know if it really means much to the team, but we will have to wait and see whether him leading the CFL in receiving yards means something. I do believe going into this week,
He's
he's
100
still,
yards ahead, right?
yeah, he's still ahead of the, is it Justin Hardy still in Ottawa that he's ahead
Correct.
of? Yeah,
Yeah.
so he's leading the league. He's got to be close because I know he had 119 yards last week, so he's probably got a he's got to be pretty close to 1,500, I would say, Cole. As I know Cole's looking it up right now. Um,
We don't have Jay in the chat obviously tonight.
no, I know.
Thir-
But yeah, no,
13
it's
1363.
so he would need 137 yards. And you know what? I think that's doable for Justin McInnes. I mean, we saw him have a 250-yard game earlier this year. We also saw him have, I believe, a 200 yard game as well against Hamilton. So twice he's been over 200 yards. I know a few other times he's been over 150. As I said last week, in a game that I actually didn't think he played that well. I mean, he had the fumble late in the first half. And then I got home and I looked at the stats and I was like, oh man, J Max still had 6 catches for 119 yards. Like, that's not bad. So I think that's really doable for Justin McInnes. A guy like Alex Hollins, too, who's come back from his injury, the separated shoulder, I believe it was, not that it was ever officially released by the Lions, and he came back last week, and he wasn't playing super hot as well, even before he got injured with Nathan Rourke as the quarterback. So I think that continuity that you spoke of earlier in the show will be huge for guys like Alexander Hollins, guys like Justin McInnes, and a guy like Javon Katoy, who will not play tomorrow, but we hope will be ready for the playoff run for the BC Lions.
Yes, indeed. So talked a lot about Vernon Adams, talked a lot about Nathan Rourke. Um, Actually, I guess we didn't really talk too much about Nathan Rourke. Um, just to kind of, we've talked about him enough, I feel. I do hope that he does handle this. I think people were kind of reaching with some of the pictures I saw on social media last week after Nathan got pulled, of comparing them to Vernon Adams, because of Vernon Adams was shown on the TV broadcast multiple times of hyping up his team and congratulating them, that sort of thing on the broadcast. And Nathan was, I guess, kind of, they were reporting that he was 10 yards away from people and not talking to anybody and stuff like that. And I think that is kind of to be expected in games like that, where you can find yourself a little bit more isolated because you're pissed off on how you played. I would hope that going into a game like this, we've heard all the right things in practice this week from the media availabilities that we've heard from Nathan. Um, he did say that he was kind of accepting of the, I guess, the move, but was also ticked off. So I do hope he is as professional as Vernon Adams was, and supports him like VA did, because I think that would kind of be a black eye on the resume of Nathan Rourke if he was to maybe handle it a little bit differently, and would definitely make, I think, for an even more interesting off season for people like us to have
Mhm.
that conversation. Because I would sure hope my franchise guy that you're paying a bunch of money is um, you know selfless enough, and can kind of, the writing's on the wall of Nathan Rourke's kind of security, I think, over Vernon Adams. Vernon Adams is the much his contract's much easier to be a tradable asset. Nobody's going to want to take on the sizable amount of Nathan Rourke, although he is obviously a coveted asset. After his last 8 games or whatever it is, it's going to go plummeting into the toilet. So that he's not going to be as much of a trade asset as Vernon Adams is going to be. And I think Shane was mentioning on our little group chat there, the weekly show guys, will Vernon Adams fetch the first overall pick from Calgary? I really hope that, I think that the Lions find a way to maybe not sell it to the highest draft pick, and maybe they can get a mid to late first round pick, even in the second round pick, and try to get a rosterable player from a
Yep.
team, or some sort of special teams demon, whether it's, maybe a Janarian Grant. I'm not too sure if Janarian Grant's going to be available, but, it's a player like that who makes an impact. It's going to make an impact. As much as I'm an advocate of the CFL draft, I'm trying to become a bigger voice for it. And I think Canadians are only getting better. I think having that known asset is just so much better than the lottery that you're kind of getting into in a CFL draft where, players kind of excel in all sort of different situations and schemes, all that sort of stuff go into drafting. I think just adds to it being a crapshoot that the draft is. I think if you can get a rosterable player that's a proven CFL commodity player, I think that would be a even better fine trade for the BC Lions because they need some fixing. Cough, cough, offensive lineman, cough, cough, anybody on the defense, cough. Blake, is there any other thoughts on the quarterbacks? We talked about Nathan Rourke, kind of hoping for him to be professional. We are, I think, both excited to see VA back under center, but also I think a little bit nervous. Is there any other thoughts on the quarterbacks before we get into maybe a little bit more, depth charts, injury report?
No, I just think it's going to be really interesting to see. What I would be more interested to see, I mean, obviously, I hope the Lions win tomorrow. I will, of course, be at the game. I'll be cheering for the Lions, if no other reason other than to beat you in our weekly show pick'em. But no, all jokes aside, I will be very, very interested to see if, and let's be real, like this is a possibility. If VA has a bad game against a good Montreal defense, what did the Lions do in 2 weeks going into the West semifinal? Like Rick Campbell came out and said, if VA plays well, he'll get the starting job, but he didn't say what would happen if VA played bad. And I don't want to think about that, but I think we need to as a realistic possibility.
Yeah, I don't want to think about that whatsoever, buddy, because that means we just have to go round and round in circles again. And I think, unfortunately, I said it on the post game show. I know you weren't able to join last week. I think, unfortunately, this season is going to have to be a sacrificial one for one Nathan Rourke to just reset. I don't think that this is his year. I think this kid has been through a
A
lot in
lot.
the last 16 to 18 months basically trying to rebuild his game for the American style game. Although football is football at the end of the day, it is two completely different games when you kind of put them side by side with how the fields are different, the balls are different, downs, etc. Players on the field, um, politics, all that sort of situations kind of go into um, the NFL and stuff like that. And I think going through four different NFL organizations, one obviously the BC Lions in whatever it was 18, 24 months, trying to learn all four of those different schemes coming back into the CFL, I think we were probably a little bit unfair with the expectations of him coming back and lighting the world on fire. I think he needs to, stew on this, have an off season to, work with Rob Williams. We'll see all the videos, I'm sure, on Rob's Instagram and stuff like that of them training this off season. Really, sit and stew on this, reset, come back because that player's still in there. I'm not shy about
I
saying that.
agree.
I think Nathan Rourke is still one of the best quarterbacks in the CFL for sure, but I think North America number two. And I think that guy's going to be in there somewhere. And I think an offseason where he has to really, um, you know, be honest with himself. He didn't play good. He played, if we're being honest, he played subpar. I don't know if I would go as far to say he played like shit because I think there was some things on both or on some, out of his control, some situations that were out of his control in terms of offensive line, kind of having to be thrust into this situation. So I think he will be honest with himself that he hasn't played well. As you mentioned, the 4-9 touchdown interception ratio is terrible for Nathan Rourke standards. Now, obviously, he has some rushing touchdowns in there, so I think it's probably a total touchdowns of maybe 7 or 8 to 9 interceptions. But that that's not by any means good. You're kind of trying to squeeze anything you can out of saying overall touchdowns to interceptions. So that being said, I think it's just unfortunate that I think personally, I'm hoping for VA to kind of run with this thing because I don't think Nathan is going to be able to rekindle some of his magic all of a sudden. It's not as easy in pro football to just flip the switch. Although I think a lot of fans just hope and think pro athletes can do that. They're also human, just like you and me. So I think it's going to be tough for Nathan just to see the situation happen, say it goes bad, flip the switch, and say, I'm a different quarterback going into Saskatchewan or Winnipeg. I'm gonna lead us to victory. I just think that's a hard ask, and I think even with the back and forth that'll happen if VA doesn't play well, I think will lead to even more doubt for this team of you know them just really not understanding who they are and who their leader is, kind of. So let's hope, buddy. I think I will sacrifice. I said on the weekly show, I will fall on the sword for the season series against each other to have the Lions win a goddamn game one in the playoffs. Because as we just said, regular season finale, no more games. They have the week 21 bye. You need all the momentum,
because of dirt bikes.
all the positivityness going into your bye and then into a playoff game versus whoever you're going to play. So, Blake, let's enough about the quarterbacks. Let's get into injury report. Looks pretty much the same. I know you had a little bit of news that I think we were wondering last week about Cianti Evans of the non-injury related label that is on the injury report. He DNP'd all week in practice once again. I don't know if you got specifics, but I think it's just I guess that's what it is, a non-football related specific incident. And he's just
Yeah,
not
it's
seeing.
literally non-injury related.
Yeah, so it's a tough one. I believe he is like essentially getting benched. I would that's kind of like the just the easiest probably way to say it. Of which I think is kind of weird. No, Blake. Like
No, I agree.
I thought he was playing well. Like Jalen Edwards Cooper hasn't been terrible, and he hasn't blown away the competition either. So I thought that was pretty interesting because I thought Cianti Evans was probably the I don't know if I'd say the least of our worries in the secondary, but outside of Gary Peters, I think Cianti Evans was probably the next guy that I had the most confidence in the secondary. So, very interesting decision to see. I know we were very interested the last few weeks on the previews, wondering why he was on the injury report with a non injury related reasons. We found those out. Obviously, you going to On Tap, asking one Nick Kowalski, you and your little insider sources. I know you've been Blake Milton insider for the last few weeks here on the weekly show, the previews. So let's get on to some other ones in the injury report. You mentioned Javon Toy once again will be unavailable for the BC Lions. Other than that, I think TJ Lee appeared on there, but is going to be available. Adrian Green once again is going to be out. He's dealing with a knee injury that I think he sustained in practice, if I'm guessing
hmm
correctly, because obviously he had the interception there versus Calgary in the fourth quarter, and then we saw him next on the injury report after that. So the next guy that is out is offensive lineman Tyler Packer once again. I know he's been dealing with a lot this season. I know head injury to start, hamstring now, and once again was a DNP. He was limited on what is it, Thursday,
Thursday.
which probably tells me that he is maybe close to returning, maybe next week or something like that, or maybe after the bye in the playoffs, something like that. So I would say keep an eye on that one for sure. And other than that, it is business as usual for the BC Lions, health wise. Injury report, Blake. Injury report pretty much looks the same as it's been the last few weeks. Christophe Boyu, I guess we'll start with the defense, is going to start at safety once again. I know Roar Report actually mentioned on Twitter as well of the Lions being, I think, at the ratio with whatever it is, 7 players.
Below the ratio for the
They're
first
below,
time yet.
excuse me, below the ratio because you more often than not they're dressing. I know at times this year they've dressed like even 10 to 11 Canadians overall. So I think they have 7 or maybe 8 of them total dressed. I don't remember exactly what it was off the top of my head, but um, other than that, Blake, it is pretty much business as usual in the secondary, in the linebacking core, and then in the defensive line. There is one small change. I think Josh Banks is listed as the designated American. He's not going to play the first snap and then be able to kind of come back into the game. Christian Covington will get the start as the Canadian at nose tackle, and then we'll see those guys. They rotate quite a bit, anyways. Um, any thoughts on the defense, Blake? It's pretty much business as usual, as I mentioned.
Yeah, no, the only thing we did mention the Deontay Evans thing, and the other player that I talked to Mr. Nick Kowalski about was Patrice Rene, and I can tell you guys on the preview show here live that it was a family matter. We didn't go into any more details, and those really aren't necessary. All that people need to know is that it was a family matter. That's why he was not playing for the Lions in Saskatchewan. But he is back in town. He practiced, I believe, all week, and he will be in the starting lineup tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah. So defense, like I said, want to see some more from them. I think it's probably unfair to want to see or I guess it's unfair to kind of hang our hat or really, Davis Alexander, I think, is going to get the start once again.
No,
Um,
Fajardo is starting, but whether he plays
the whole
or
game.
how long he should play, I should say. I wouldn't expect very long. Maybe a quarter from Cody Fajardo, maybe the first half, but I would not expect him to play the whole game.
So it should be interesting, but nonetheless, also, if this defense beats up on Davis Alexander and some of those guys that maybe get rotated in that second half because Montreal doesn't have much to play for, I'm not going to really, hang my hat on, that defense is riding high going in the playoffs. So as long as they're able to, maybe create some exciting plays, maybe get a turnover or two, I think that is some exciting positivity to build on. But this defense needs a whole lot of, I think, I guess maybe a makeover would probably be the best way to put it this off season. But a lot of guys that returned, so I think it's just interesting that they are struggling so much this year, seeing as that they have a lot of guys coming back from last year. But offensively, Blake, obviously the big name, Vernon Adams Jr., QB1 this week. Other than that, William Stanback, the assortment of weapons at receiver are the same. Javon Toy still out of the lineup. Stanley Berryhill still in. Offensive lineman Broxton Woodruff, Couture, Chung, and Perkins. As always, Mackey back in the saddle was obviously probably one of our lone bright spots offensively last week. Was able to cash in short yardage and with the touchdown. Um, what are your thoughts offensively, Blake, from this unit? Getting the band back together, or are we in trouble?
No, I'm actually excited to see how this offense performs. We talked about it for quite a long time, almost half an hour, about VA getting the start. But I really do believe that this offense is going to show. And again, this is no disrespect to Nathan, but I agree with you that Nathan kind of needs this offseason to reset himself. He's going to come back. Um, you know what? Heck, I was going to stop myself, but I'm going to say it. Nathan is going to come back next year, and he is going to be the West Division nominee for Most Outstanding Player. Like, I think that he will come back, he will work all off season, and he will be the Nathan Rourke that we saw in 2022. But until then, I think that this offense and this team as a whole is better with Nathan Rourke behind, or sorry, with Vernon Adams behind center.
Yes, indeed. So I guess that kind of leaves us. Obviously, specialists are the same. Mr. Automatic, one Sean White, Stephen Flintoff, Kyle Nielsen, Terry Williams. Riley Pickett has been turned into a hybrid fullback now with his career reception in any level of football. I believe was that last week or maybe the week before.
Last week, I think.
Shout out to Riley Pickett. I believe he was actually on the 2017 Saskatoon Hilltops that my VI Raiders got bent over by in the CDFL National Semifinal. Um, so always been a fan of Riley and rooted for him. Another junior guy trying to find his way in the CFL. I think let's get into it, Blake. We talked a little bit about it. Kind of, well, actually, I guess we talked a lot bit about it on the weekly show throughout the year here. I brought up obviously multiple times of my hot take coming into the year, but I think Rick Campbell, this coaching staff probably deserves a discussion going into this one because I think as Farhan Lalji also reported on Donnie and Dolly, he thought that if they get out anywhere other than the Grey Cup that all things are off, are nothing safe this offseason. I think there could be a full changeover. There could be a few changeover. He said that it's going to be not pretty. I would think if they don't make it to the Grey Cup, things are going to be asked, questions are going to be asked. Excuse me, and I don't know if Rick Campbell and Neil McAvoy want to know the answers to that because I don't think they are safe. They have their quarterback. It appears they have some assets to trade. The only other thing to do is get rid of a coach, GM. They could, I guess, theoretically get a or use a scapegoat. They get rid of offensive coordinator Jordan Maximic, Ryan Phillips. I would think it is, as you said, a cold day in hell before they get rid of Ryan Phillips. But I guess crazier things have happened. It is the business of football, so you never know. But as I said on the weekly show, Blake, I just think Rick Campbell continues to um, out. I don't know. I guess what the
Get
right
out
thing
coached.
out coach himself, but just kind of um I believe what I said is just not be able to read not be able to read the room and not
Yep.
be able to kind of read and feel his team. So like I mentioned about the Nathan Rourke and pulling him in the Toronto halftime game, not really feeling that and not really understanding that game. Uh, back to Saskatchewan, not feeling like they needed a spark at halftime and going to Vernon Adams out of the half is just absolute idiocy to me to say that you thought that it was the right decision to stick with Nathan Rourke, who hasn't proven in, it would be different if it was 2 or 3 weeks. In 8 weeks, I believe he's now been in the CFL.
Yep.
Um, and you decided to ride him once again, with a home playoff game on the line in Saskatchewan, and instead you wait to the fourth quarter, and then in the fourth quarter you go to Chase Bryce. It's obviously been joked about. I give Bobby a hard time, but he is correct more often than not about the third and manageable situations that CFL coaches, more specifically Rick Campbell, does kicks field goals and keeps teams in the game. It's cost us in the last few weeks. I know a lot of time before I kind of came over to the dark side, if I guess if that's what you want to call it. I would kind of the Lions have got away with it. The Lions have got away with it. Now it's kind of cost us in some situations. I do understand the analytics behind it. I do kind of more so lean towards the feeling of it. If it's a close game, it may be a little bit of a different feel. You maybe want to kick. If you're kind of one knockout punch away, some of these situations I think change with what's going on in the game. But I think time after time he's failed to live up to the expectations. He's failed to really, I think, manage the game from a coaching perspective. We've seen him be not very great in terms of the challenging in coaches' challenges. He's really been miserable in that aspect as well. So, what are your thoughts on Rick Campbell, number one, before I guess we get into Neil McAvoy shortly before we kind of end the show here tonight, buddy?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with Farhan Lalji. I've said it for a few weeks now that if the Lions don't make the Grey Cup, at least I think I will go as far as to say even if they make the Grey Cup and don't win, that Rick Campbell might lose his job. But for sure, if they are a West semifinal or a West final exit for the third year in a row, it would be in the Western final for the third year in a row. If they're a West semifinal exit, I think the day after they are eliminated, Rick Campbell is looking for new work and he's looking for a house in somewhere that is not Vancouver, as unfortunately I think he will lose his job. He has to be the head of this. Shane's kind of warned us all year, even when the Lions were good. He was like Rick Campbell's your coach, guys. You guys got to be careful. And when the Lions were playing well, we kind of sloughed it off to the side. But just so many decisions that have cost the Lions games. I mean, even just go back to a few weeks ago. Like the Lions, if you realistically think about it, the Lions, all they needed was one more win, and they could have had a chance to potentially host a playoff game, even with the loss to the Riders last week, with one more win. If you go back to the Hamilton game, they're down inside the 5 yard line, and I know it's third down, but you ended up losing the game anyways. So what's the harm in going for it on third down? If you go for it and you get the touchdown, you win the whole place. That's a home game. BC place goes nuts. And if you don't get it, you lose and you get blamed anyways. But the thing that I have trouble dealing with is the Lions kicked the field goal in that game. They ended up going to overtime and then they still lost. So it didn't make a difference kicking the field goal at the end of regulation. There's been other times I can think of the first Ottawa game back in Ottawa where the Lions are down 10, right around the same spot in the field. I believe it was like the 10-yard line. Rick Campbell decides to kick field goal to make it a 7-point game. The Lions kicked the ball deep to the Red Blacks, and they never got the ball back for the rest of the game. So it's just small decisions like that that have, especially in the back half of the season, have been seeming to cost the Lions over and over again.
I did get one good reminder, I guess, as we kind of end things tonight, Blake. Watching slash listening to Donnie and Dolly today, they did bring up the 2000 Grey Cup team with Farhan Lalji on his appearance today. And they did mention, I know I've been very critical of not wanting to use the 2019 Winnipeg Blue Bombers as an example, but I guess they were talking about the 2000 BC Lions also being a third place team that went on to win the Grey Cup, excuse me, also. So um, it has happened, folks. I don't want to seem like so much of a negative Nelly because anything can happen in this beautiful game of football, especially with the one game playoff
One
situation.
game.
On any given Saturday, on any given Sunday, any team can win. And all you got to do is just kind of play good football at the right time. I think the probably promising thing for the BC Lions and the biggest hope for them, if we are being honest, if we are looking from a bird's eye view on the Western Division as a whole, all three teams that are going in the playoffs have struggled at points in the season. I think all three teams are definitely very beatable. That being said, Winnipeg is on a hell of a confidence right now, on a hell of a
Until
streak.
last week, though,
Yes,
Toronto
for
shut
sure.
them down.
For sure, and Saskatchewan, I think, is headed in the right direction right now as well. That being said, it's going to be tough for BC Lions to kind of flip the switch, is what I've said as well. But they do have the pieces to get it done. To do that, to go into Saskatchewan, to go into Winnipeg, to knock them off, to go on the road once again. And what a story it would be, Blake, to go on the road twice, to knock them off, just to get back to your home in BC Place for a home Grey Cup. I think what a story that would be. I am hopeful. I am not confident. Obviously, judging by my pick, Blake trying to throw me under the bus, making sure BC Lions fans that have heard or listened to the show tonight. I did pick the Montreal Alouettes this week. I did say, folks, I will fall on the sword of the BC Lions, though, for a victory. If I have to lose to Blake in the season series, I will do it willingly to get a BC Lions win, although I don't know how much it will do in week 20 going into the playoffs. Lastly, I did see actually Noah was tuning in on Instagram, which I think is funny.
What's going
Um,
on, Noah?
he says Buck Pierce, BC Lions head coach 2025. He also
That would
says,
not surprise me, honestly.
yes, me too. He also says, don't count the Lions out though. Anything can happen in the playoffs. Bombers squeaked in as 3 seed in 2019 and won 3 straight road games to win the cup, as we just said as well. I also see Cliffy Pine, our friend from the Alouettes Flight Deck podcast,
Cliffy, go to
was
bed.
he was tuning in. I don't know if he is live still. He was in here a few moments ago. But it is late there. It must be past midnight in Montreal. So, Cliffy, excited on a game day. Can't wait for the Montreal Alouettes to kick off in BC. I too am excited, Blake. It is only one more game, man. I'm super bummed, actually. I had been waiting for this game to get back over. It wasn't going to work out. I was hoping for a home playoff game, and I get bummed either way. I haven't been to a home
Nothing.
game in 2.5 months. It has been super shitty, and I am not going to get back into BC Place until the Grey Cup. I thought it was actually funny today, Blake, of the both Blake and I were filling out our media credential application. It asked the question, obviously, of Blake, or well, for me, it was funny of will you still want to attend if the BC Lions weren't in the Grey Cup or
Yeah,
whatever? I thought about hitting that, but I was like, I'm just joking. I will be there, rain, shine, whoever's playing in the game. Um, I am looking
it
forward to
it
covering.
also, not to cut you off, Cole, but there was another one that, like, because of course um this is for all media, so people like TSN, and just to throw out some examples, guys like Cliffy, who did get media credentials last year. It's like, will you need access to the stadium on game day? And I checked off no, because we already have our tickets anyways.
Tickets. Yeah, me too. Especially with the press box too. I said the same thing. Although I would love to sit in the press box seats because those are great seats at the 50-yard line. I already have my tickets, and
No
I
team
know
gear though.
Carly would be disappointed if I left her with the boys, and the boys are, I would imagine, going to be three sheets to the wind by kickoff. So I just know I have to sit with Carly, so no need for the press box seats. All I think Blake and I want is a little bit of access to some coverage, doing some content and stuff during the week, and should be a good time. Hopefully, cross your fingers, folks, for Blake and I that we get some access, we get awarded our credential pass, and are only able to give you guys the best content. Hoping to do maybe some sort of stuff with Coach Phil and Shane as well, as we'll be boots on the ground. Obviously, we won't be able to do our weekly show from Vancouver altogether Wednesday night. Maybe we'll be able to do a Friday night or a Saturday night, some sort of video from a bar, pub, or something like that, just to give our quick game day thoughts or something on the matchup. We will get that out to you guys when playoffs and Grey Cup near. But Blake, just under an hour, buddy. Any thoughts so we can get out of here, go enjoy our Friday night? What are your thoughts?
No, I'm just I think we pretty much covered everything. It's pretty obvious the one big storyline is Vernon Adams Jr. I think it's, I'm trying to find the best way to say this. Folks need to temper their expectations, because if the Lions go in and they dominate the Alouettes, which, do I think that'll happen? No. But is it a possibility? Yes. Because as we said, Cody Fajardo might only play either a quarter or the first half. Austin Mack is not playing in the game. They've also sat Walter Fletcher for this game. So it will most likely be against the Alouettes' second or third stringers. However, I do believe that if the Lions can pick up a win, it will give them confidence going into the playoffs. We will not know where the Lions are going until after week 21 finishes, but I believe the Lions can go into either Winnipeg or Saskatchewan, get a win, and then take their chances in the Western final.
So, one, Cliffy is still up on the East Coast. Blake, he chimes in on Instagram. He says, "Still here, y'all. Keep up the good work, boys." He also says, "If I can offer you guys some advice on that, talking about the media credentials," he says, "take whatever you can get media-wise and run with it as hard as you can. It does pay dividends in the long run." So, appreciate the advice, Cliffy. Hope you're doing well out east. Hopefully, it's not as miserable as it is on the west coast right now. It is definitely the
Dude,
wet
it's
coast.
pouring.
It is pouring. It is windy. It is rainy. And we are looking forward to
UBC
seeing
score
you
update, Cole. UBC score
20,
update.
21 to 5 for UBC final.
Yeah.
Um, I
Yeah.
also I also joked with Matt Young yesterday on the Canada West Football Show of at least there's one good football team in BC right now, that being the UBC Thunderbirds, who are on a 5-game win streak, because the BC Lions are sure not that. But get back to Cliffy. Hope you're doing well, and we're looking forward to seeing you in just over a month's time at Grey Cup. Should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to experiencing my first Grey Cup, popping my Grey Cup cherry, if you will, and seeing everybody that comes with Grey Cup festivities. It should be a good time. Blake, any final thoughts, buddy? UBC wins. That's a Canada West thought. It was a good Friday night for me. Like I said, I was able to just chill on the couch, grab a blanket, enjoy the stormy weather outside, but watch the. Honestly, it was 28-0 or whatever, 27-0 in Hamilton. I turned that one off. I kind of enjoyed a little bit of YouTube scrolling, and kind of going down some rabbit holes there. And then the Canada West game kicked off at about 6 o'clock. I watched that game before we came on air here. It was a good Friday night for me. I know a lot of people are probably thinking, Cole, you're such a loser. You enjoy just hanging out at home on a Friday night. Yes, I do. I would very much consider myself probably some sort of introvert, where I very much like to be, kind of in my own surroundings by myself, just enjoying what I like to do, which is just hang out, watch some football. I'm a very easy, simple human being. I know Carly probably sometimes would like me to go out and get out and enjoy some other things, but I like what I like. So that is watching football. I'm excited to watch it another day. That's kind of my weekends. Like I always joke with people at work that I always tell people I'm like, oh, I got plans this weekend. I got plans. I really got nothing going on, people. I'm coming home. I'm watching football, and I'm probably doing not a whole lot else. I might be doing a few things around the house, or maybe doing some running around. But other than that, Saturday's football day, Sunday's football day, and Fridays kind of became that now as well. So Blake, I guess we can get out of here, buddy. You can go enjoy the rest of the weekend. You will be at the game tomorrow, so obviously, if you guys see Blake, go say hi, go say go Lions, as VA always does. Blake, looking forward to a three keys from you in the morning. Obviously, we get back to William Stanback as one of those keys. That's usually
Yeah.
good luck for us. Usually, we win games when he's a key to success. Other than that, folks, you will see Blake and I tomorrow night. I know Blake will be busy going home from the game, so whatever capacity we get Blake is fine. If we're not able to, all good. But I will be back once again, 4 days in a row. I guess Blake, you will see my face, your face, 3 out of the 4 nights. You guys will see us tomorrow on a BC Lions post game show. Have a good night, everybody, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.